It was a peaceful Thursday afternoon in May 2019 when 15-year-old Kaylie Juga returned home from school with her mom, Stephanie. Their home in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was filled with laughter and music as the mother and daughter shared a moment of bonding. They danced and joked around, just enjoying their usual after-school time together before the rest of the family came home. Stephanie, who worked from home as a photographer, had picked Kaylie up as usual and returned around 2:20 p.m. The house was quiet except for the music playing as Kaylie went to get ready for her part-time job. Stephanie went into the master bathroom to dry her hair. Suddenly, at 3 p.m., the sound of gunshots shattered the peace. Screams rang out from Kaylie's room. In shock and fear, Stephanie called 911 at 3:02 p.m., believing someone had broken into their home. Unaware of the full extent of her daughter's injuries, she stayed locked in the bathroom, terrified that the shooter was still inside. Stephanie, bleeding and terrified, told 911 she thought the shooter was someone they knew, her daughter's ex-boyfriend. Despite being in pain, her concern was entirely focused on Kaylie. Once she felt it was safe enough, she ran from the bathroom to her daughter's room. What she found was every parent's worst nightmare: Kaylie on the floor, gravely wounded. She began CPR with everything she had, even though she had been shot herself once in the arm and again in the side. The emergency response was quick, and paramedics arrived to take over. Kaylie was rushed to the front yard for emergency care, while Stephanie was taken to the hospital just blocks away. Despite all the efforts made, it was too late. Kaylie had been shot multiple times in the chest and once in the head. She was declared dead at the scene. Her injuries were so severe that even if a team of surgeons had been present in the room, they wouldn't have been able to save her. Investigators found Stephanie wounded but alive. She described the terrifying moment when she saw the shooter. Standing at her bedroom door was none other than Martice Fuller, her daughter's ex-boyfriend, a 15-year-old boy she had once welcomed into her home. Stephanie remembered trying to talk him down, saying, "You don't have to do this." But his reply was chilling. "Yes, I have to." He then raised the gun and shot her. She managed to lock herself in the bathroom and called 911 and her husband. Police later confirmed Martice had already fled the house by then. The crime scene was chilling. 7 shell casings were recovered, with evidence that shots had been fired in Kaylie's bedroom and outside it. 1 casing was found under a table. Blood trails lined the stairs, and furniture was destroyed as police had to forcibly enter rooms to ensure no one was hiding. Kaylie Juga was more than a victim. She was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend. She was a cheerleader, a softball player, and an honor student. Everyone who knew her described her laughter as unforgettable. Her sense of humor and bubbly personality brought joy wherever she went. Her friends, devastated by her death, organized a special cheer routine and a moment of silence in her honor. Initially, the school district resisted the tribute, fearing legal implications since both the victim and the accused were students. But after public outrage, they reversed the decision. The tribute went forward, and those who knew Kaylie gathered to honor her memory. Her father spoke of the Unferneshi's wife had been shot trying to save their daughter, and yet the school hesitated to acknowledge her loss. A year before the tragedy, Martice Fuller was introduced to the Juga family as Kaylie's new boyfriend. He was charming, athletic, and had dreams of playing college football. The Jugas welcomed him, and he quickly became a regular guest, joining them for dinners, holidays, and even family events. Over time, however, Martice became controlling. He constantly called and texted Kaylie, demanding her attention. He would video call her for hours, even when she was at home doing homework or watching television. His obsession grew more intense, and he began showing signs of jealousy. Even when Stephanie addressed his behavior and asked him to stop, he didn't take her seriously. Instead, he laughed it off and continued to dominate Kaylie's time and emotional space. Social media became a battleground for their relationship. Accusations of cheating flew from both sides, and public posts revealed the toxic nature of their connection. Kaylie, trying to keep the peace, downplayed incidents at school where Martice had publicly confronted her. One such incident involved Martice demanding Kaylie's phone in the school hallway. The confrontation grew so heated that school security had to physically restrain him. The school made adjustments to keep the two apart, but Martice refused to accept the changes and violated the agreement. He was eventually expelled. Kaylie, finally seeing the danger, ended the relationship. Her once loving boyfriend had become aggressive and unstable. She began to fear him, rightfully so. After their breakup, Martice began stalking Kaylie. He would linger outside her house, even at night, peering into her window. He called her repeatedly, using friends' phones when she blocked his number. He showed up uninvited to places he knew she would be. Kaylie, only 15, had to quit her job at a local laundromat because she felt unsafe. She wrote a letter to her employer, explaining that she needed to work somewhere Martice wouldn't find her. She was scared every day. Her friends stopped posting their hangout spots on social media, afraid Martice would follow. Kaylie hoped that her new job would give her a fresh start, far from Martice's watchful eyes. But it wouldn't be enough. Investigators learned that Martice had stopped living at his mother's house and was couch surfing among friends. On the day of the murder, he was dropped off just 10 blocks away from the Juga's home. He had been watching the house, planning his move. Martice told his cousin Ananis that he planned to shoot Kaylie maybe once, maybe twice. He knew the family's routine and waited for the right moment. Surveillance footage captured him heading to the Juga home on a bike, dressed in a hoodie and carrying a backpack. He ditched the bike in the nearby park, changed clothes behind the trees, and entered the house unnoticed through the garage. Just over a minute later, gunshots rang out. Then he fled, leaving behind heartbreak, blood, and death. Police pieced together the timeline using multiple security cameras. One camera showed a figure dressed in black moving toward the Juga house. Minutes later, the same figure ran away, this time faster, wearing different clothes. In total, the attacker was inside the house for under 4 minutes. Shell casings, blood trails, and bullets lodged in furniture painted a grim picture. It was clear that Kaylie was shot at close range and that Stephanie had bravely tried to protect her. Despite the chaotic nature of the scene, police quickly began to zero in on their main suspect, Martice. Martice's cousin, Ananis, confirmed their suspicions. That night, Martice showed up at her house. Although they weren't very close, he stayed for a few hours. As he grew emotional, he confessed to what he had done. Ananis tried to calm him but ultimately called the police the next morning. Ananis at first hesitated to tell detectives what Martice had shared. But after being reminded that Kaylie was someone's child, she opened up. She said Martice had watched the house from the trees and waited for the right moment to strike. He had planned it. He told her that when he walked into the house, Kaylie was in her room and music was playing. He shot her and then turned on Stephanie, shooting her twice. He fled and returned to the park, where he changed clothes again before riding off on the bike. His detailed confession matched the timeline perfectly. Cameras and forensics supported everything Ananis had said. It was more than just a hunch. Martice had premeditated every step. And thanks to his cousin's testimony, police had what they needed to press charges. Police still needed the murder weapon. With help from another cousin, Dantrell Seymour, they found it. Martice had wrapped the gun in a diaper and dumped it in a sewer drain in Rhine. Had Dantrell not cooperated, it likely would have never been discovered. Martice had also discarded the clothes he wore during the shooting. Though the black hoodie and white shoes were never found, police believed they were likely dumped in a similar way in sewers or drains between Kenosha and Rhine. However, the black backpack he carried and the clothing worn before and after the shooting were recovered. These items were found in his possession the day after the murder when Ananis turned him in. The evidence was overwhelming. By the time of the murder, Martice's life had spiraled. After being expelled from school and losing access to sports, he became increasingly unstable. He was couch surfing, without a working phone, and reliant on friends for transportation. He was only 15 but was isolated, angry, and consumed by a need to regain control. His obsession with Kaylie had turned into hatred. He had lost Herond, blamed her for everything that had gone wrong in his life. The prosecution would later describe his actions as those of a teen driven by rage and rejection. He wasn't just heartbroken, he wanted revenge. And tragically, he carried it out with deadly intent. Martice's plan was not a sudden decision. Days before the killing, he was messaging friends about wanting to kill Kaylie. He showed off his newly acquired gun and asked a friend named Desiree to help him do the hit. She refused but kept the conversation to herself. On the day of the murder, Martice texted her again around noon, saying he was angry and needed to do that to her. Desiree understood he meant to kill Kaylie, but still didn't alert anyone. By the time police questioned her, Kaylie was already gone. Desiree later testified in court, confirming that Martice had been openly discussing murder. Her testimony solidified the case for premeditation. He didn't just act out of rage, he had carefully plotted every move. Martice was arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide and attempted homicide for shooting Stephanie. He was only 15, but his actions would place him in adult court. As the trial approached, new challenges arose. Prosecutors accused Martice and members of his family of trying to tamper with the jury. They had monitored jail phone calls and believed he memorized names of potential jurors and had others attempt to contact them. His mother was also arrested after an outburst in court. These developments revealed how deeply Martice and his supporters were struggling to face the consequences. It also showed a willingness to bend the system in his favor, further proof that he lacked remorse. In court, prosecutors presented two timelines. One was Kaylie Juga, a girl trying to leave a toxic relationship and move on with her life. The other was Martice Juga, a teen consumed by jealousy, spiraling out of control and making one violent choice after another. The assistant principal at their school testified about Martice's aggressive behavior. She described feeling genuinely frightened of him, a rare experience for someone used to dealing with troubled teens. She recalled him refusing to accept the school's decisions, calling constantly, demanding to be placed in Kaylie's classes. His obsession was growing, and everyone around him could see it, but no one imagined it would lead to murder. Stephanie took the stand and bravely recounted the horrific moment she saw Martice at her bedroom door. Her memory was clear. She remembered his face, his voice, his words. "Please don't do this," she begged. "Yes, I have to," he replied. She described trying to save Kaylie while bleeding from her own wounds. Her pain didn't matter, only her daughter's life did. Her testimony was powerful and emotional, leaving no doubt in the jury's mind about what had happened. Despite all she had endured, Stephanie stood tall. Her words were filled with love for Kaylie and a fierce need for justice. The courtroom was silent as she spoke. No one could question the truth of her experience. After days of emotional testimony and overwhelming evidence, the case was handed over to the jury. The courtroom held its breath as 12 jurors deliberated on the fate of Martice Fuller. The prosecution's case had been airtight. Ballistics, phone records, security footage, and witness accounts all painted the same picture. It didn't take long. The jury found Martice guilty of first-degree intentional homicide for the murder of Kaylie and attempted first-degree intentional homicide for shooting Stephanie. The courtroom erupted in tears, some of sorrow, others of relief. Justice had finally spoken. Martice showed little emotion as the verdict was read. To many, his silence was chilling. It was as if he had already accepted his fate. But, for the Juga family, it was the beginning of healing. Nothing could bring Kaylie back, but at least her killer would never hurt anyone again. At sentencing, the judge had harsh words for Martice. He called the act cold-blooded, emphasizing how calculated and cruel it had been. Martice was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole until he served at least 60 years. He would be nearly 80 years old before he'd even have a chance at freedom. Stephanie addressed the court during sentencing. Through tears, she described how her life had changed forever. She had to learn how to live without her daughter, how to cope with her own trauma, and how to face each day knowing that the person who destroyed her family was once someone they trusted. The community also responded. Schools improved their protocols for handling teen dating violence. Kaylie's story wasn't forgotten. Her name became a symbol of the urgent need to recognize red flags before it's too late. While Martice never spoke in court, those close to him claimed he later expressed regret, though not always clearly or sincerely. Some believed he struggled to accept what he had done, while others felt he still blamed others for his downfall. His mother, despite her courtroom outbursts, visited him in prison. In time, even she acknowledged that her son had taken a life and shattered a family. She quietly began to distance herself from the idea that he was a victim. Meanwhile, Martice's name became a cautionary tale. Parents, teachers, and students would speak about his case when discussing the dangers of controlling relationships and unresolved anger. His life had become a warning, not a legacy. Kaylie's school honored her memory with a memorial garden and a scholarship in her name. Her friends and classmates often spoke about her smile, her kindness, and her dreams. She had wanted to go into medicine to help people, maybe become a nurse like her mom. Each year, her birthday was marked by candlelight vigils. Stephanie continued to speak publicly about domestic violence and teen relationship abuse. She became a local advocate, determined to make her daughter's death a turning point for others. Kaylie's story reached beyond Kenosha. News outlets covered the trial, and her name was etched into the minds of many. Though her life was short, her impact was lasting. Stephanie never fully healed, but she found purpose in her pain. She started a foundation dedicated to helping teens recognize the signs of toxic relationships. Schools across Wisconsin invited her to speak, and her message was always the same: speak up, don't wait. Kenosha, once shaken, stood united in support. The tragedy had opened eyes and hearts. Programs were launched to support students' mental health, and laws were proposed to help schools intervene when warning signs appear. In the end, the story of Kaylie Juga and Martice Fuller became more than just a murder case. It became a lesson in love, loss, and the power of prevention. Kaylie's light had been stolen too soon, but through her mother, her voice continued to shine.